Yes album.
Yeah, it's a great listen, beginning to end, and I'll even just let it spin all day long. That's how much I like listening to it. It's just really enjoyable record.
Yep, agreed. All right, this next one, beginning of a new band after leaving Deep Purple.
Yep.
Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow. Of course, we've discussed this one probably a million times, but it's got basically Ritchie Blackmore with Elf.
Yeah, it's the Elf band with Ritchie Blackmore. Yeah.
And they had been touring with Deep Purple at the time, and so. You know,
strong album.
Yeah, it's not their best.
No, it's I mean it's definitely not Rising, which
right. Their next album,
but
is great.
It's pretty damn strong. I mean, it's got Man on the Silver Mountain on it.
Huge. I mean, it's still played on FM radio.
Yep, it's got Catch the Rainbow, which is a great one of those longer tracks that they would start to develop more. What else is on here? 16th Century Green Sleeves, which is the remake of that medieval. What Child Is This? Green Sleeves theme that Ritchie Blackmore likes to do.
Temple of the King.
Yep. And Still I'm Sad, which is a Yardbirds cover.
Yeah.
Great album.
Cool cover. Ritchie Blackmore, great guitar player. Obviously, Ronnie James Dio, one of the seminal vocalists of the hard and heavy sound.
Yeah, this is where Dio started to get his due. I mean, he had 3 albums out with Elf. Didn't really have much success with them, but they obviously caught Ritchie's ear. And one thing we were talking about earlier, this is one of 2 times that the band is referred to as Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow. This one, the first album, and then the very last album he did in like '96 was it was called Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow. I think the title was like Strangers in Ourselves or something like that.
Strangers in
Us. Just a little tidbit. Awesome album.
This one.
Yeah, I love this one. Jethro Tull, Minstrel in the Gallery. They definitely had, I mean, Jethro Tull was equal parts heaviness and folk, like prog folk. I mean, Ian Anderson excels on the acoustic prog melodic type stuff. Gorgeous melodies. I mean, he's one of the best, period. And he crapped the whip in Jethro Tull. He was the leader. This one has got one of their most notable tracks, named the title track, Minstrel in the Gallery, which, Minstrel in the Gallery, did I say that right? Sounded funny. It's got this kind of intro that kind of builds up into this heavy bit, and it just, they just start rocking it out halfway through to the end. Love that track. My other favorite song on here is One White Duck / 0 to the power of 10 equals nothing at all. It's a heartbreaking acoustic number that, if you listen to the words, it's got to do with loss and loss of love and just the musing on it afterwards. I never do that. I never muse on my lost loves. I can't stop thinking of that.
And obviously, they're one of the greatest heavy metal bands of all time.
They got a Grammy in '89. They're even heavier than Metallica.
Yeah.
Personally, I will take Jethro Tull over Metallica, but I wouldn't call them heavy metal. But
no, by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
Nope.
Another great cut on here is Cold Wind to Valhalla. Another great song. It's cool. Cool medieval type drawing on the front. The minstrel standing in the balcony of the gallery on the back. It's a classic Jethro Tull title. If you like him at all, you'll dig this one a lot.
This was an easy no-brainer. I'm sure most people are going to wonder why it's not even in the top 10.
These are funny albums for me.
Dress to Kill. I actually do love this album, and I play it a lot.
It was their first big hit. Was on this one, Rock and Roll All Night.
But it wasn't actually the version from this that became the big hit. It was the live one, right? Or was it this?
I think it was a double. I think it had the studio on one side and live on the other. The live one's the first one I ever heard.
Me too.
And I remember my folks had one of those old K-Tel or something Ronco albums that had the studio version on it long before I had this. And that's when I heard the studio version of Rock and Roll All Night. I'm like, oh, this is weird. And that's when I didn't have these albums till later. Alive was my first. So that's how I got introduced to Kiss. To me, these first 3 albums, the production's lacking horribly.
Yeah, but I like it. I really like this album. Of the first 3, actually, Hotter Than Hell is my favorite.
Hotter Than Hell, definitely.
It
does.
On it.
The deep cuts. I mean, Strange Ways is one of their greatest songs of all time. Mainline.
Yep.
The title track. Going Blind.
Yes.
That's an all-time great. And these are cool albums, and they definitely they spoke of what was going on at the time. It's that kind of style.
But there's a lot of great songs in there too. So you got, of course, Room Service, baby.
Love that one.
Room Service.
Has this one got two-timer?
Ladies in Waiting,
two-timer.
Getaway, which was a freely cut.
Yeah, that was one of the first. No, that's not true. Ace had songs on all three of these, but he didn't sing any of them.
Nope.
Usually it was Peter that sang Ace's songs.
Come On and Love Me. That's a pretty
That's
heavy
a great
song.
tune.
Great riff.
Yeah, Love Her All I Can's on here too, and that's
Which is a great groove on that
that's
song.
a great one. That was actually a Wicked Lester song that they pretty much took verbatim. They just it's the same friggin' song. It's really not all that different. And of course, She is on here too, isn't it?
I thought so.
Yeah, She's on here. I just can't see it because it's such a short title. There it is. Yeah, and that was another Wicked Lester song.
But that one's much heavier than the.
And that's one of
original.
my favorite all-time Kiss tunes.
That's a great song. That was a Paul and Gene together cut, as I recall.
Actually, it was
Did it say on
Gene
there?
and Steve Cornell.
Oh, really?
He was one of their guest writers. Did a lot of stuff early. He was still with them. Him and Sean Penridge did a bunch of co-writes with these guys in the beginning.
And I love Gene's suit in the front cover.
Yeah, he's got the clogs on, kind of like the Brian May thing.
He's got the clogs on, and then he's got they're basically floods he's wearing because the pants are too short for him.
But it's a classic shot. I mean, I've seen bands recreate this, you know, tip of the hat.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I always thought was funny, if you look at him, Ace is the total street punk. He's got his foot up on the lamppost.
Or lamppost, whatever it is, yeah.
And Paul, even though he's taller than Peter, he's on his tiptoes. It's kind of a funny shot. And this is back when Gene was just totally mugging for the camera all the time. So it's a classic album.
Yep.
It really is.
Every way, right down to the cover.
Those first three, they just go together, you know. And that when they released them as the originals, that was when that's when I got it and kind of started getting into it.
I'm just going to preview, say something previous to showing this one and saying, no, we don't think this is a heavy metal band.
Well, this is
hard and
1975.
So what was hard and heavy in 1975 is not the same thing as what would be hard and heavy in 1985.
But considering where they came from, it's pretty damn heavy.
Lynyrd Skynyrd, nothing fancy.
Yep. I love this album. This is the debut of Artemis Pyle on drums.
Yep. Who is still alive today, but for whatever reason, doesn't play with the band.
Him and Gary Rossington are the only two left, really, from the originals, I think, except maybe one or two of the background singers.
And this is one of those deeper cut albums. You're not going to find the hits on here.
It's also got one of their biggest hits of all time, Saturday Night Special.
Yep.
And a cool story about that is I read Artemis Pyle said he had just come from burying his father to these recording sessions, and when he was doing the drum bits for Saturday Night Special, he was basically like in tears while he was doing it. And it's a pretty intense drum bit. I mean, it's like rolling all over the place and doing these paradiddles on the snare. And I love this album. I think it's got some great. The deep tracks are awesome on it. It's also the last album, I believe, that Ed King appeared on, who was the third guitar player to be replaced. They did one album without a third guitar player, and then Steve Gaines came on the album after that.
Right.
So this was Ed King's last, and for some reason he felt he had to leave. We just lost Ed King last year.
Whiskey Rock and Rollers on here, Railroad Songs on here, On the Hunt, Cheatin' Woman.
On the Hunt, that's one of their heavier tunes.
Yep.
Love that song. People have covered it. The Obsessed covered it. Did a great version of it. Cheatin' Woman is another great one. Just Railroad Song is a great one.
It's just a solid album front to back, and it's not full of the songs you've heard a million times on the radio.
It's a strong album, kind of like Powerage by AC/DC.
Right.
Full of great songs, but not really hits.
Yep.
And this is the same way. I put it in the same. What's another? Am I Losing is another favorite.
And we were talking about this before while we were getting these radios. This should have been the front cover.
Yeah, back cover is way better than the front, and the front should have been the back.
And I'm sure that's the way it is because you've got the middle finger here, the middle finger salute, and that's my.
That's probably what it was.
Yep.
That's probably what prevented it from being the front. Friggin' Billy Powell, too funny. Great shot.
The funny thing is, a few years later, he ended up in a Christian band.
With Leon Wilkeson?
Yep.
Yeah.
Vision, right?
And I never heard him. You
Vision.
told me about it. I've never heard him.
Not Southern rock, more of an AOR hard rock thing, straightforward.
Which is what happened a lot of times when bands like that went Christian.
This next one is a heavy album. This one I would definitely consider 70s heavy metal. Öyster Cult, On Your Feet, On Your Knees, live album, double album set.
Yep, this is all the best of the first 3 albums in a live setting,
and
it's
it captures the energy and the.
What an amazing cover too!
Yeah,
what a cool cover that is.
It's kind of like it always reminded me of Black Sabbath's first cover. It's just
Kinda.
something ominous about it.
Yep, it's got the blue metal logo going on up top, and it's got this kind of church with a black limousine in the front, and that ever-present Kronos cross symbol that nobody knew what the hell it meant, but it appeared everywhere, and it worked for them because it had enough mystery to it, and
made churches go crazy.
Oh yeah, it made people afraid because they had no clue what it was, and it's actually. What I've since understood is it's the symbol for the planet Saturn, and it's also called the Kronos cross, and it's got some kind of a attachment to alchemy or something like that. I don't know. It looks cool to me though. And the backside even, it's like this guy with black leather gloves is opening up what looks like a hymnal or a Bible or something.
There was just something about 70s live albums though. They just, in 70s studio albums, like we just showed that Kiss album,
This
didn't
has a
quite. Yeah, it does. Didn't quite capture the band's sound in the studio. Nope. We always get tamer.
But this one was one of those.
Right, and the live album somehow captured the band's sound better.
And the gatefold's so cool. They did this thing on stage where they called it 5 guitars, and all the members would have guitars in their hands. And on this one, it's got obviously like an artistic version of it. But if you look in the audience, it's got all these hooded people sitting in the audience, and it looks like the druid type people they had on the cover of Fire Unknown Origin. It's like, oh, that's the Blue Oyster Cult right there.
And then of course Spinal Tap had to
do their thing with the basses.
With all the whole band playing basses, and they had the druids.
Which is probably a tip of the hat to that.
Oh yeah, there was a ton of that kind of stuff. Tip of the hats to Aerosmith and Blue Oyster Cult.
Oh yeah,
all those bands in there,
and not always flattering tips of the hats.
No, because it was funny. I mean, come on. All right.
I know that seeing the Spinal Tap movie actually kind of pushed Steven Tyler to start cleaning up his act because he said it hit too close to home.
Yeah.
And especially the fact that they had that song called Stonehenge, and the album that Aerosmith had just put out had a representation of like a Stonehenge, and he was like, it was too close to home, man. I knew I had to get my shit together.
Yeah, I remember that story too. It's like,
funny.
I didn't find it funny at all.
Oh,
the rest of us are laughing our asses.
I played with a guitarist. First time he'd ever saw it, I watched it with him. He didn't get it at all. Problem was, he might as well have been Nigel and David St. Hubbins all rolled into one. So many of the jokes were about him, but he could not see it, and so he thought it wasn't funny. I was like, dude, you should have been in Spinal Tap.
All right, next up, this is another one that
didn't name any names. Did you notice?
No, you didn't.
Didn't say who it was.
This is Deep Purple. Come Taste the Band. Mach 4 era, Mach 3 era, more 4 era.
4. This is Tommy Bolin.
This is Tommy Bolin. Yep.
This is the Mach 3 minus basically Richie Blackmore.
Right.
To me, this is the last. No, well, Perfect Strangers was a great one.
Perfect Strangers was a great comeback album.
As far as this being a real major change of personnel, this is a great album.
Yes.
And they got an awesome guitar player in there. Tommy Bolin was a great player.
Right. Very different though from Richie Blackmore.
Yep.
Blackmore came from he was a blues player too, but he also had that classical feel.
Yeah, totally.
Whereas I don't know, this one has more of a bluesy vibe to it.
Yeah, and I think Tommy Bolin could get jazzy in places too.
Yep, I agree.
This probably was even. It would appeal to fans of Whitesnake probably too, especially the earlier stuff.
Exactly.
I thought this was a great album. My favorite cut immediately was Love Child because it's got that great riff. A lot of the other stuff is it's a bit more mellow with heavier guitar in it, but I think it's a solid album, and I think I got to listen to it when I was still young enough and I wasn't so jaded that I was able to give it a chance without being totally influenced by all the other stuff because I wasn't as familiar with it.
Right.
So this is one of the early ones I actually got. I think it's great. I think it's a great band.
Yep, great album.
A great album.
Weird cover. Would have been hard. I'm sure this was really hard to do back in the 70s because this is well before any sort of computer thing.
Yeah, that's all like done by hand.
Yeah. Interesting. And then the back cover, it's drag. It's got the lady lipstick on here.
But it is pretty similar to something like Burn, where it had all their faces in the candles and all that stuff. But it's good stuff for sure. I don't think there's anything wrong with this album. great players.
I mean, especially if you're a Tommy Bolin fan overall,
Yep.
it's a great album for him.
And it's kind of a mature album.
Yeah, it's definitely different. It's hard to explain because it's still Deep Purple. It's still got that 70s heavy vibe to it, but it's just different from what you would think of when it comes to Deep Purple.
It's unique in the Purple catalog, for sure. There's nothing else like this. Yep. All right, I don't know what number we're on, but I love this album. All right, so this was Electric Light Orchestra's breakthrough album, I think, as far as like giving them their first hits, which would have been Evil Woman and Strange Magic. And the funny thing about this one is there's a song on here called Fire on High. It's the opener. You used to hear it on classic rock radio all the time in the 70s and 80s. I never could figure out who the hell it was. It's a great song, and we used to hear it on this ride at this this kind of carnival fair place we used to go to. There was a ride called the Scrambler, and they would play Fire on High. It also was used as the theme of Wide World of Sports on Saturdays, like on ABC.
Yep.
So heard it for years, could not figure out who the hell it was. I knew who Electric Light Orchestra was, but this was never on their greatest hits. Couldn't find the damn thing till I finally discovered this album. I'm like, there it is. And it's still not something that appears on their greatest hits, but it's one of their best known and well-loved songs, but nobody knew it was ELO.
Right.
And it's definitely not the ELO that were the major hit makers, like with when Out of the Blue came out. And they had all that massive, that much more refined, orchestrated sound with the Jeff Lynne songwriting and harmonies and
all the layering of instruments.
Which they would just get kind of cheesier as that went on. But man, for a while they had it. But this is one of their heavier ones, I think. It's still got that initial sound where they were trying to mix the string instruments with rock and roll. And on this one, I think they did a real good job of it. I think this is a killer album. If you want to hear the roots of ELO, I would go with this. We've still got Bev Bevan on drums here, who was one of the original members, along with Jeff Lynne. And Bev Bevan went on to play with
Black Sabbath
for a while.
Ian Gillan.
Yep. Good album. Face the
Tour.
music, ELO.
One of the earliest shows I went to.
Yep.
This one's all you.
Humble Pie. Probably the last classic Humble Pie album right here. Peter Frampton's already been gone for 2 or 3 albums, so Clem Clemson's on guitar, Jerry Shirley on drums is also, Greg Ridley, and of course the mighty Steve Marriott on vocals. This is still the classic Humble Pie. Obviously the years of drug abuse are starting to take their toll at this point, but still great stuff on here. The title track's probably my favorite. Roadhog's on here. Rain is a cool cut. I don't know what else to say about it. It's definitely still Humble Pie. It's worth having if you like the Humble Pie sound. They would do a couple albums after this with different lineups. Never really quite captured it, but Steve Marriott's voice was always strong and always worth hearing. So definitely, Street Rats, for sure it's worth picking up if you dig Humble Pie.
This next one is kind of a super group for the time.
Oh, yeah.
This was not a huge hit maker. It did have a couple hits on it, though.
A couple big hits.
Unlike the first album from them, Bad Company, which was,
first album was like, the whole thing.
What was the second album? It was the second one?
This is the second one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you got on here that's a big hit?
I Feel Like Making Love.
Yep.
Is the biggest hit, for sure, and definitely Shooting Star.
Good Lovin' Gone Bad. We could have more. Shooting Star was that was the other one.
Good Lovin' Gone Bad was a little bit of a deep cut. It wasn't on the initial greatest hits albums, but it was always one of those ones that felt like it should have been.
Yeah, and it was one of those ones you heard on the radio back then.
Yep.
Bad Company were just one of those bands you didn't go to a party without hearing.
No, no, and they're up there with one of some of the most overplayed stuff on classic rock radio.
Yep.
But the cool thing about the opening cut, Good Lovin' Gone Bad, is Paul Rodgers' vocal style in it. It's like he sang it when he was hoarse. But it totally works.
Yep.
I mean, Paul Rodgers, one of the greatest voices in rock, bar none. But
it was rock and roll.
It was, and the way he sang it, he sang it. It's almost like he did 50 takes and just wrecked his voice, or he was sick, and he just sang it, and it works. It totally works. It was like he had Phoebe's sexy voice.
Yes.
From Friends.
That's funny. It sounds like you could do the exact same damn thing.
Yep. And Diamond Head did a cover of that tune later on, and it was only then that I really realized what a massive influence Bad Company was on them. At least Paul Rodgers was on Sean Harris.
Yeah.
I never put them together, but if you listen to those two side by side, you can tell Sean Harris learned his chops from Paul.
And that's the last one in this. So now we're down.
Are we up to our top 10?
We're up to our top 10 now.
All right.
So let's go on. Let's
That
go on.
rank that. Yeah, some of these were a little out of order. I would have put Nazareth here before I would have put Bad Company.
Yeah.
They're all
in the top. They're all in our top 20. That's kind of how we got solid eventually.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So we are at our top 10.
Top 10.
Are we gonna just barrel through?
Barrel through. Ready?
All right, man.
Here we go. You guys still with us?
10.
All right. Number 10. Probably more my influence on this one getting in the top 10 than anybody else's, but
it's a great one.
I love this album. I've loved it since I bought it. It has an 8-track back when I was a kid. Got it in a 5 and dime store.
You turned me on to this one. I heard of them through Iron Maiden.
Yep.
You're the one who gave me this album, though, and I finally heard it. I remember we were just hanging out. We were driving around, and you said, "Hey, let's check this out." And I loved it. Fell in love with it. It's friggin' awesome.
It's a very early industrial sound. Nobody was doing industrial in the 70s.
No.
But it has that industrial feel, so it's proto-industrial kind of thing.
But it's full-on prog,
But
too.
it's full-on prog, and a lot of Nektar fans don't like this album. It's not in the top favorite albums. I don't understand why. It's always been one of my favorites.
It's one of the
very
best.
unique. They don't sound like anybody else, and they were a unique band anyhow because they were kind of a German/English band. They were kind of from Germany, but they moved to England, and they had some English members, so it was...
And definitely influence on Iron Maiden, like I said. They had some really neat prog influences. They did a cover of King of Twilight, which was on the album prior to this, Tab in the Ocean, or 2 albums prior, I can't remember. This one, artwork,
phenomenal.
It's so friggin', it's psychedelic, but it's also like horrific in some ways too. It's got this weird...
I don't know if it's a male or a female...
It's a headless, like all buffed up, some kind of golden god with breasts, but it's got a skeleton leg, and it's
wrestling a
cobra. It's so friggin' bizarre, and the whole it's a gatefold, so it's just like it's like King Crimson in the Court of the Crimson King. It's just this completely bizarre.
Then it's got the and the inside's got the mascot, the Nektar mascot on the inside, right there. Open up the gatefold. There he is.
Is that the same guy?
It's a different guy, but it's...
Well, and what the hell is that? He's part Indian, he's part corpse, he's part bug. He's got an ear spear. he's got an eyeball or something, or a cantaloupe in his hand.
I think it's an apple, but anyhow.
And he's got a torso of a human skeleton at the bottom of his weapon. He's got a like a cricket or a locust foot. It's like, wow. Talk about recycled.
Right. Yeah. I like I said, though, this is a very unique album for them.
Very.
And in general, I think.
I mean, the back cover could have easily been the front cover, too.
The back cover is amazing. And there's 2 different versions, 2 different mixes on this.
Yep.
There is the U.S. mix, which I believe is the one you have.
This one's on Passport.
That's the U.S. version, and this one is, I think, I always mix them up.
Because Priest was on Passport, so I was going to be inclined to say that was the British one. Is that the one with the poster?
Bacillus.
Bacillus?
That's the German one, or the U.
Okay.
So yeah.
Oh, maybe it's UK and Germany.
No, it's UK and the US.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. But then anyhow, there's 2 different mixes. The US mix is the one I heard first, the one I was used to hearing, so it's the one I tend to like better. Right. But in all honesty, most people tend to like the European version better. That's just me, and I'm sure
it all depends on what you heard first.
Yeah, that's what I heard first, really. And like I said, I bought it as an 8-track in a 5 and dime store.
There is another version of the cover that has the corners rounded, where you can see. I believe I've
seen
it.
And actually, this particular one here isn't even a gatefold. This is the European pressing.
It's got the poster.
Instead. So you got
So you got an even different. The back has got a bit of a different color take on the print.
Yes,
but it's very, very bizarre.
And then it's got the same
gatefold.
lyric sheet gatefold. Yeah. Anyhow, I love that album. So
in fact,
it had to be in my top 10.
I want to hear this now. I haven't listened to it in a while.
It is a good album.
Do some repair on that cover.
That's the glue just popped.
Yeah, it's a great one. If you've never heard Nektar, definitely a decent one to start with, or maybe Tab in the Ocean is also a great one.
Yeah. Next up,
What's next?
number 9. Easily could have been in the top.
Yeah,
5.
easily. UFO-FORCE it. This is, it's more deeper cuts for sure, but a lot of people would say this is their favorite. It's their second one with Michael Schenker.
They got away from the space rock completely on this one.
They did. There was still elements of it on Phenomena, the first one.
Right.
Or the one before this.
This was full on first wave of British heavy metal sound. I mean, that's what this was.
Yeah, and we're gonna, let's see, the well-known tunes, probably Let It Roll, Shoot Shoot,
Mother Mary,
Out in the Street. This Kid's, it's all very Schenker-fied riffs. We've got a Hypnosis cover, which they became known for. Another one that was censored because we were just talking about this earlier.
You can't tell who the male or who the family is, or it could be 2 females or 2 males.
Yeah, it's
you really can't tell.
You really can't tell, but you can tell that it's a sexual thing that's going on. That's about it.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
You're inclined to think that's female because she has no pants on, and that's a female kind of thing to do, but it also looks like if what might be the female is sort of forcing herself on the guy, which is completely backwards from
and he's got
typical rape etiquette.
She's got her hand on his breast.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
It's hard to tell.
And you can't really even tell on the original one where it's so blurred out.
It's a ghosted, yeah.
It almost looks like they're completely naked on that one. It's so hard to see. And it was until years later I got the original that I realized.
I'm not even sure why it was censored. I guess you can see part of a person's butt here. So, you know. That's
yeah, who knows?
Whatever, but yeah, it's Schenker.
And the part that always kind of blew my mind was I didn't realize this till later. Force It. We've got a bunch of bathroom hardware in here. Force It, faucet. I never got that play on words until years later, and that now makes sense. It's like that's where all the bathroom pieces came from.
And of course, Phil Mogg, one of the most unique vocalists ever.
Yep.
Really should be up there, you know, with Zeppelin, and he just has that classic voice.